The second half of the season has begun for the Orlando Magic. What is in store over the next 20 games in the third quarter of the season today on Locked On Magic?
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is January 17th, 2025. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. Of course, follow me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, the third quarter of the season is here. What to expect from the Orlando Magic and the big questions the Magic have to answer as we move from the fun first half of the season to the more serious second half of the season. We'll get to all that coming up here in just a moment. First, I want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. No matter when you listen to us, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's right when we upload, we truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. And you can make Locked On Magic even bigger part of your day with the Locked On Magic Daily newsletter. It's the one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Magic newsletter. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So we have hit the midpoint of the season. We are now 42 games into the season, so we are past that midpoint. And like I always do, I like to kind of take a step back and look not only back at the first half of the season, which we did a few days ago when we talked about Jamal Mosley being our MVP of the first half of the season, but also begin to look ahead to what the next 20 or so games are going to give us. This is a critical time for the Orlando Magic. Undoubtedly. It was at this point last year, I made this point yesterday, but I want to reiterate this point. It was at this point last year that the Magic were at their lowest, like right at the midpoint of the season. The wear of the win streak, the 9-game win streak was gone. The Magic were struggling. They were dealing with injuries and illness, and it was as low as the Magic got all year long. And they fell to 8th in the East. And we thought, okay, well, the season's going to be exactly what we thought it was going to be. But then the Magic got healthy. Then the Magic got some home games. They started building some momentum, and they put themselves in 5th in the Eastern Conference. They were sitting in 3rd or 2nd. They were sitting in 3rd in the Eastern Conference, remember, entering the last week of the season. It was a dream finish to the year. And while I would characterize the upcoming schedule for the Magic to be not as easy or not as advantageous as that schedule was last year, there is no reason to panic that the Magic are now tied with Indiana for 5th, that the Magic now have the same number of losses as the 7th place Miami Heat, only one more loss than the 8th and 9th place Atlanta Hawks and Detroit Pistons. I believe that's correct. They're 5 through 9 is separated by just a couple losses, by one loss. The Magic have played more games. So again, this is a point I made last week when I said, well, earlier in the week when I said, where are the Magic really in the standings? The Magic have played more games. Those other teams have to make up wins. Orlando's got the same number of losses as a lot of teams with more games under their belt. That's a good thing. And so, like, if we are actually looking at the standings and thinking about the standings, the Magic are one game back of the Bucks. The Bucks are in 4th. They've got it for now. And so the Magic have work to do. Nothing's clinched. You don't clinch anything at game 41. But the Magic have put themselves in the driver's seat to accomplish their goals, or at least match what they did last year, considering everything they've been through already. And again, right now they are at a low point. The injuries have hit the roster. The effort that they have put in to keep this ship steady finally seems to have worn off. Fatigue is finally kind of gotten to this team. And that's going to happen. Go listen to Locked On Celtics. They're thinking about the same things, that they've just hit a rut. Every team's going to hit that in an 82-game season. And the Magic built themselves enough of a cushion that their rut dropped them to 5th instead of to 8th like it did last year. Now we'll see what the Magic do Friday against the Celtics. But ultimately, any type of success or anything the Magic are going to accomplish starts with health. Paolo Banchero has been back for 3 games. It's been very, very encouraging to see him. He's doing a lot of really good things, but still obviously working his way back into the flow of things. But the Magic right now are as injured as they have ever been. Franz Wagner is still a week and a half away from returning with his return to competition reconditioning. Jalen Suggs is out with a low back strain. He will still miss Friday's game. No clue when he will get back. He is still just doing light things on the floor. It does not seem like he is ramped all the way up, and the Magic are rightfully being cautious. Goga Batadze is now in concussion protocol, stretching the Magic's front court depth thin. Orlando did acquire Colin Castleton, or Osceola, I should say, did acquire Colin Castleton. He's been a two-way guy with the Grizzlies and the Lakers in the past. Very, very possible he is a two-way option for the Magic when they get home. Just to give them some front court and center depth. But ultimately, the thing we don't know through the first half of the season is, what does this team look like when they are healthy? They were 3-2 with Paolo Banchero before he got hurt. But a very encouraging 3-2. They were crushing the Bulls until Paolo no longer felt like he could drive or felt comfortable driving to the basket. Franz Wagner was sick in those early days. Their other loss was a blowout loss to Memphis in their home opener, but they took care of their business against the Nets, against the Heat, and in those early and against the Pacers when Paolo dropped 50. Remember, Orlando holds a 2-1 lead on the Pacers. Final game of that season series, game 81 in April. We don't know what the Magic look like when they're healthy. And that, frankly, makes it impossible to evaluate and judge what this team is. That makes it impossible to say, we know who the Magic are. Like, I can give you the numbers. With Paolo and Franz on the floor together in 119 minutes, barely anything, a little bit more than 2 games worth. The Magic have a 114.2 offensive rating, a 105.9 defensive rating, plus 8.3 net rating. It's okay. It's fine. That works. That'll play. When Paolo and Jalen Suggs are on the floor together, the Magic have a 109.2 offensive rating and a 105.6 defensive rating in 127 minutes. When Franz and Jalen Suggs are on the floor together, they have a 111.1, 106.3 split, plus 4.9 net rating. And since I just foolishly forgot to look this up before I recorded, when the Magic have all 3 of Paolo, Jalen Suggs, and Franz Wagner on the floor together, the Magic have give me a second to load it. Excuse me. When the Magic have all 3 of their quote-unquote stars on the floor together in just 17 minutes. Just 17 minutes together through the first half of the season with their 3 main players. Unbelievable. Just 17 minutes. When those 3 share the floor, as I continue to stall and look this up while I'm recording, when the Magic have those 3 on the floor in 85 minutes, 17 minutes per game, in 85 minutes, the Magic have a 109.9 offensive rating, 106.5 defensive rating, plus 3.4 net rating. They didn't play with Goga Batadze either, by the way. And they had Kenny, who couldn't shoot back then. We don't know what this team is. And everything is sort of on pause. We've learned a lot about this team. We know a lot about this team. I'm not saying that we can't make decisions about this team. But ultimately, how good they can be, how successful they will be in the playoffs, is based on how those 3 play together, especially Paolo and Franz. And Paolo has not played with all-star Franz, with Franz after the injury. We don't, as much as we may think we know about this team, and we know that they're an excellent defense, we know that they will play with insane effort, Wednesday night accepted, we know that is in them. But we don't really know this team's potential or its future. And that makes everything hard. Over the next 20 games, we're going to hit the trade deadline. And the Magic will have to make some decisions. And deciding not to do anything is a decision too. The Magic will have to determine if they have enough to accomplish their goals this season. If long-term goals are better served by making a trade. I will argue that the Magic's biggest trade deadline acquisition is going to be getting Franz Wagner back. Doesn't matter anything else. Getting Franz Wagner back is going to be a huge acquisition. Acquisition in quotes. We don't know how good this Magic team is. And so ultimately, the big thing we're going to learn over the next 20 games is what this team looks like when they're healthy. If Franz Wagner follows the same pattern that Paolo Banchero followed, 2 weeks of return to competition conditioning, he would be set to come back before the road trip on January 30th. The Magic will start a 6-game road trip in Miami on January 27th. They will come back, then fly out to Portland January 30th for a 5-game West Coast trip. Portland, Utah, Golden State, Sacramento, Denver. We'll talk more schedule specifics coming up in a minute. The Magic are going to get Franz back here in the next week and a half, 2 weeks, next 10 to 14 days. I have January 25th against the Pistons circled to get him back in a home game. The Magic don't have a lot of back-to-backs. They only have one back-to-back in that set at Sacramento, at Denver, February 5th and 6th. And then they get the All-Star break very shortly after that. And then they actually open the All-Star break with the back-to-back February 20th in Atlanta, February 21st at home against Memphis. We got to see this team healthy. And the next 20 games is about what this team looks like healthy. And from there, we can start making judgments. From there, we can start to truly assess who this team is and what they can accomplish. And that's the big thing. This next quarter of the season is a statement of intent. It is going to set the table for whether the Magic actually accomplish their goals. We'll talk about the schedule coming up and how the Magic can step up and take care of business coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends over at Robinhood. With Robinhood Gold, you can now enjoy the VIP treatment, receiving a 3% IRA match on retirement contributions. The privileges of the very privileged are no longer exclusive. With Robinhood Gold, your annual IRA contributions are boosted by 3%, plus you also get 4% APY on your cash in non-retirement accounts. That's more than 8 times the national savings average. The perks of the high net worth are now available for any net worth. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. To receive your 3% boost on annual IRA contributions, sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. A 3% match requires Robinhood Gold at $5 per month for 1 year from first match. Must keep funds in IRA for 5 years. Go to Robinhood.com/boost. Over 8 times the national average savings account interest rate claim is based on data from the FDIC as of November 18th, 2024. Robinhood Financial LLC member SIPC. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. So you've probably heard me reference this a few times. There's this website called Positive Residual. They track kind of NBA schedules. They take into account not only opponent win percentage, but also rest advantage and kind of the little things that are baked into the schedule. When the schedule came out, we all understood the first half of the Magic schedule is going to be very difficult. Like very, very difficult. The Magic are on the low end of back-to-backs this year, if I'm not mistaken. Most of those back-to-backs were front-loaded. A lot of those back-to-backs were on the first part of the schedule. And while I would say the last quarter of the schedule is a little bit trickier than it might look, there's a lot more road games on that back half of the schedule. The Magic were going to have an opportunity to build wins and cement themselves in wherever they're going to end up in the standings in this early part of the season. So the Magic seem to be in a pretty good place to be 5th in the East. And yes, entering maybe a low point, they're going to have an opportunity here over the next 20 games to do what Detroit has done, to do what Indiana's done, to do what Miami's done a little bit, to do what Atlanta's done a little bit, put together a little win streak. You can win 6 in a row. If the Magic win 6 in a row, they'll be back and forth. If the Magic are able to go, let's just game this out a little bit. If the Magic go 13-7 over their next 20 games, at the third quarter of the season is 21 games. If they're 14-7, they're already 0-1. But if they're 14-7 over the next 21 games, the Magic are going to put themselves in a very good spot to be in the 4-5 matchup, to be in the 4 seed. And there's no reason to think they won't. The reason why the Magic have the third easiest remaining schedule, and I will note Indiana has the second easiest remaining schedule according to Positive Residual. So we're not completely out of the woods, even with a favorable schedule. This is a very home-heavy next quarter of the season, and this is a very favorable next quarter of the season. With a lot of teams, the Magic should be competitive. Now, look, they are right now in a rough part. At Milwaukee, at Boston versus Denver. They lost to Milwaukee, got their butts kicked on Wednesday night. That happens. Cleveland lost by 40 tonight to Oklahoma City. Milwaukee lost by 30-something to New York. You can't lose sleep over one bad loss. It's going to happen to everybody. It just happens in this league. The question is, how do you respond? The Magic need to play well against Boston. Winning at Boston is going to be tough, but very doable for this Magic team. And Boston's not playing so great either. They're kind of soul-searching a little bit after they lost to Toronto. Denver's on the rebound. But here's their next stretch of games. At Toronto, they're winning a little few games right now, but still one of the worst teams in the league. Home versus Portland. Home versus Detroit. Detroit's playing well. I don't want to take anything away from them. That's a very, very big game on the 25th. Potential for Franz Wagner to come back. At Miami, again, at Miami. Miami's beaten Orlando already before without Jimmy Butler. Orlando's gotten them. They've gotten their licks on each other. Big win for potential tiebreakers. The Detroit game's big for potential tiebreakers because I do not believe Orlando goes back to Detroit this year. I believe that is it, and that is for the season series. So it could be very, very important. There's a weird thing going on where like Milwaukee can't beat any of the top 3 teams, but they're really good against the teams below them. Orlando's kind of the same deal. They've beaten Boston. They're 1-0 against Boston, but Orlando struggled against the teams above them, but dominant against the teams below them. I'll get to that number here in a second. Then the Magic go out west, at Portland, at Utah, very winnable games. At Golden State, very winnable game. At Sacramento, Sacramento's playing well right now. I don't want to take anything away from them. At Denver, and then heading into the All-Star break, home versus San Antonio, home versus Atlanta, home versus Charlotte. And then coming out of the All-Star break, at Atlanta, home versus Memphis, two good teams. But then Washington, Golden State, Toronto, with Cleveland in the middle there. There's a lot of teams and a lot more teams than we've seen. Orlando still has 3 games against the Wizards. They're going to get one of those in this stretch. I believe they'll have 2. They'll have 2 more. They'll have the 2 on the road in the last quarter of the season. They've got Toronto here. Toronto, again, winnable game. Utah's beaten Orlando already, but Utah is a winnable game. They're a team that struggles. Orlando's got and then the Magic have Charlotte, and the Magic will finish their series with Charlotte. This is a big quarter of the season to kind of begin to cement yourself because you probably notice outside of this road trip the Magic are taking now and the West Coast trip, the Magic are not on the road over the course of this next 20 games. And so as we're thinking, how are the Magic going to cement themselves in the Eastern Conference playoff race? How are the Magic going to kind of solidify their spot? This is the quarter of the season that they're going to do it. So again, they're started 0-1, no big deal. Over these next 21 games, from the Milwaukee game to the Toronto game on March 2nd, and then the Magic will finish their season series with the Raptors on March 4th. So again, taking care, you got 2 games against Toronto in the next 21 games. If the Magic go 14-7 or 15-6 even, if they go 15-6, they're in really good shape. If they're 14-7 or 13-8 over the next 21 games, the Magic will put themselves very much in the driver's seat for the 4 seed, maybe even climbing up back into the competition for the 3 seed. This is their opportunity to take steps forward. And this is why. The Magic are still one of the best home teams in the league. The Orlando Magic are currently 14-7 at the Kia Center. That's the second most home wins in the East and the 4th most home wins in the league. Maybe they're a little disgruntled with some of their losses. Loss to the Heat was a loss that I think they would regret. The loss to the Jazz are certainly a loss that they would regret. They weren't happy with their effort against the Wolves. I don't think there's any shame in losing to the Wolves. The Magic are really good at the Kia Center. And they're going to get a lot of games at the Kia Center. Again, they got these 2 games, Milwaukee, Boston, then that 6-game road trip. That's it. 13-8. That's the split. Means it's going to be 8-12 on the back end of this, but the Magic are 8-11, I think, on the back end of it, or 9-11 on the back end of it. But Orlando's going to get a lot of home games, and this is their time to begin building it. On top of that, well, I think we are all kind of frustrated by the loss to the Chicago Bulls earlier in the season and the loss to the Utah Jazz a little bit ago. And I'm actually now trying to think who the other loss is. Let me just peruse. And then the loss to the Philadelphia 76ers when Franz got hurt. The Magic are still 13-3 against teams with records below 500. That's the 3rd most in the East, behind only Cleveland and New York. Now, a big part of the next 20 games is solidifying their spot and perhaps proving they are ready to play at a higher level. I'm going to talk about that in our 3rd segment. But the Magic have to take care of business. If the Magic take care of their business, as they've done over the last 2 years against the worst teams in the league, against the under 500 teams, if they beat the teams below them in the standings, like Detroit, like Miami, like Atlanta, then the Magic are going to find a lot of success in this 3rd quarter of the season. And they are going to put themselves in the position they want to be in for the 4 and the 5 seed. I want to reiterate this because talking to Magic fans throughout the day on Thursday, there's a fair amount of doom and gloom. There is. 30-point losses stink. They say more about the losing team than they do about the winning team. The Magic's flaws were completely laid bare. It's a problem. I'm not pretending that it wasn't a problem. But it is just one loss. And the Magic are still exactly where they want to be, despite all the injuries. So when they get healthy, and they'll be getting healthy right at a part where the schedule is favorable to them, they have to pick up wins. If the Magic struggle through the next 21 games, if they're, what's 500? If they're 11-10, let's raise some alarms. That's bad. If they're 12-9, it's okay, not great. If they're 13-8, we can live. 13-8 would be pretty solid. The Magic have to be successful in the next 21 games because this is where they can take care of their business. It's also where they will make a statement of their intent and what they hope they can accomplish this year and what they set up moving forward. Let's talk about why this is the quarter of the season to step up coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends over at Skims. When I found out Skims was making underwear for men, I was intrigued because I'd never heard of them and they got big NBA push. So I was interested, but I was like, boxer briefs aren't for me. I definitely don't have the body type that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has, but I heard so much about their quality from friends and family. And so I had to give it a try. And let me tell you, I was not a boxer briefs person. I was just straight boxers for a long time. Skims is changing that. These are so comfortable. They are so easy to wear. They're so they make you feel like you're not wearing anything, which is kind of nice, to be perfectly honest. You don't feel them at all, which is great. I tried the Skims boxer briefs. It was a nice change of pace for me, something different for me. And they were really perfect for me. Whether I'm working out, whether I'm on the go at the theme parks, at Magic games, wherever, they go with me. And it was so comfortable and so easy to wear. I didn't even really think about it. And you don't really want to think about your underwear. That's the best part. This is the most you want to think about it. Trust me. So shop Skims Men's at skims.com/LockedOnNBA and at Skims stores. Let them know we sent you. After you place your order, select podcasts in the survey and select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. Check it out today at skims.com/LockedOnNBA. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is also brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is so easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, You get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to the NFL playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make the playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. The one big element, the one big story that comes with the third quarter of the season, and this every third quarter of the season, it's a yearly thing. The one big element that comes is the NBA trade deadline. I mentioned that big 6-game road trip, that big 6-game West Coast road trip, the Magic's last trip out west. It ends Thursday, February 6th in Denver. Trade deadline day. We know it's coming 3 weeks away. Now less than 3 weeks away. And the Magic will have probably about a week with Franz Wagner, maybe a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks. Probably a week to make a decision about the trade deadline. And, what the Magic eventually do at the trade deadline is anybody's guess. My suspicion is the Magic want to see this team healthy. They want to give this group that opportunity. And there's nothing that they can really do at the deadline that isn't going to be available to them in the offseason. If anything, in the offseason, they'll have Wendell Carter to offer. And so that is a reason perhaps to wait. We will talk a little bit more about this as some rumors start to get more legs, but if Milwaukee is seriously making a run at Jimmy Butler, it might. I don't think the Magic should be playing to keep up with the Joneses, but that is something that they'll have to consider. They'll have to consider, like, not necessarily to go after Jimmy Butler. I don't think the Magic should do that, but they will have to consider. We've got to make sure we can still compete with our competitors, and we can't fall too far behind. And look, the Magic are still about development. They're still about this young team coming together. And so this third quarter of the season is as much about, are the Magic ready to take that step up? How do the Magic get to the next level? We may not be there by the end of the third quarter of the season, but the pathway there is going to reveal itself over the next 21 games. Whether the Magic need to add something external, and look, they do. The question is degrees and severity. Do the Magic need to go get a Zach LaVine? Go get another high-volume scorer like Zach LaVine or De'Aaron Fox? Can they survive with something a little bit more on the periphery? Could they just go get Malcolm Brogdon for Gary Harrison II? Would that be enough? Do they need to go get a super sixth man like Colin Sexton? Those are the questions. And maybe the Magic can't answer them yet. But Orlando still has to prove a lot. They still have to show they can step up to the plate. And look, there's no bigger place to see this than in their national TV appearances. Friday night against the Boston Celtics, the Orlando Magic will play their 5th of 6 scheduled national TV games. They are currently, 0-4? Lost to Cleveland, lost to Milwaukee, lost to Oklahoma City. They had 5. I'm missing one somewhere. Lost to New York. So lost to Cleveland, lost to New York, lost to Oklahoma City, lost to Milwaukee. They are 0-4 on national TV games. As I mentioned way back in December, I do not believe the Magic have won a regular season nationally televised game since the season finale against the Charlotte Hornets in 2019. It's one thing to say, yes, we are the 4th best team in the Eastern Conference. Yes, we are a team that is on the rise, a team to be reckoned with. And look, against the Knicks, TNT did their darndest to put the Magic over as a team on the rise. And then the Magic went out and laid an egg. The Magic still have to prove themselves on a national stage. And in this quarter of the season, they get their last 2 chances to do that before the playoffs begin, assuming they're not added later on, which very possible they could be. We could get a few more. Friday against Boston and February 25th against Cleveland are the last 2 nationally televised games for the Magic this season. A chance to prove to the world that the Magic are a serious threat. For now, they're just a fun league pass team that no one considers a championship contender. If you want to be a championship contender, you got to beat some of these teams. Oh, look, Orlando's beaten Boston. They're 1-0 against them. They beat New York. They went 1-3 against them. They've beaten some good teams. But here are the facts. Here are the numbers. Orlando is 10-16 against teams with records above 500. 10-16. That is behind Indiana, who's 15-12. That is in line with the play-in teams, to be perfectly honest. And so while Orlando always feasts on those teams below them and the teams below 500, they don't lose to bad teams, Utah loss accepted, without someone tearing an oblique, it appears. The Magic still have to prove they can consistently beat good teams. And look, we're not asking them to be the Cavs who are 16-6 or the Celtics who are 16-9. Most of these teams are about 500. New York is 11-12 against teams with records above 500. Milwaukee is 11-10. Indiana is 15-12. That's an outlier. Atlanta's 11-13. Detroit's 12-15. They need to be around 500 against these teams if they want to ultimately beat them, whether it's in the playoffs, whether it's in the second round, whether it's beyond. And the Magic, frankly, have yet to do that. If there is an argument that the Magic do need some external injection, that they need something that they obviously, like, they're 27th in the league in offensive rating or 28th in the league in offensive rating, they need some offense. They need to add something to this roster. They need to make something happen. Whether it's at the deadline or whether it's in the offseason, just look at those numbers. This team isn't a championship team yet. They're on the trajectory. Again, I'm not poo-pooing what they've done. I'm not poo-pooing the direction they're going in. They're on the trajectory. They're on the path. We can see the path to the mountaintop. They just don't have all the supplies they need to get there yet. They need to stop at base camp, get some supplies, get the right guy, get the right Sherpa. Strange metaphor. Sorry. The Magic still have to prove they can step up to this plate. And look, they forced Cleveland to 7 games. I am confident in a playoff series, the Magic will be more than competitive. Whether they win or lose that series, it will be a tight series. Whether it goes 7 games, 6 games, it's not going to be quick. The Magic are too good for it to be quick. And as always, all the Magic have to do is get you close. If they get you to the fourth quarter, more often than not, they got you. They're 12-7 in clutch situations this year. They got the best fourth quarter net rating in the league. That includes Wednesday's game against Milwaukee, which they lost the fourth quarter by like 3 points. The Magic are still really good when they can get there. But we know their issue. Like, they can't score. They can't score enough. And against the elite teams, your defense takes you a long way, but you got to be able to score. You got to be able to beat good defenses. And that's where the Magic still struggle. Now, again, does that mean the Magic are about to make a deal at the deadline? It means they have to think about it. It means they have to be open to it, because ultimately that is where they're trying to go. But certainly at the trade deadline this year or in the offseason, the Magic will have to address their offense. They will have to find something to inject some energy into this offense. One way or the other. Mo Wagner's not coming back till December. His absence has been big for this bench and big for this team. It seems small, but he gave them some force offensively he has a scorer's mindset when this team has very few guys like that. The Magic miss him dearly, and we're not going to see him again until Christmas. But that's another fun offensive player to add to the mix if you do this right. So ultimately, there are 3 goals here for the Magic in the third quarter of the season. Let's wrap this up. There are 3 goals here for the third quarter of the season. First is to get healthy and see what this team looks like at full strength. We haven't seen that. We don't know how good this team can be. This team. They are better than they were last year. I don't think anyone can argue that. But we haven't seen them at full force, and that's the next step for them. Second is to take care of their business, especially at home. If they defend the Kia Center the way they've defended the Kia Center all year, the Magic are going to be just fine. They're going to stack up wins over the next 21 games. give themselves some cushion so that they can play hard to the end of the season, maybe make a few mistakes, maybe have a few slip-ups, and still be in prime position to be in the 4-5 series, if not have home court advantage. All of the Magic's goals are clearly in front of them. And third, this quarter of the season, the Magic have to prove they are ready to step up to the plate. Or, having not proven that, know what they need to do so. That's what's on the line here. And again, that's going to be a theme throughout the rest of the season. That's what's on the line over the next 21 games. And as this team gets healthier, the Magic are absolutely in a position to take advantage of it. And absolutely in a position to succeed. This is the part of the season they have been waiting for. And now it's time to just go out and do it, starting Friday night in Boston. But that's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. You can, of course, find me on Twitter at @PhilipR_OMD. Find me on Blue Sky at PhilipRR. You can subscribe to the podcast and have a podcast, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all filming podcast. You download podcasts to your podcast-enabled listening device. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can find us there on Twitter at OMagicDaily. And for even more Orlando Magic content, be sure to check out my Patreon page, Orlando Magic Hub, at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. As always, thank you for your support. As if all that's not enough, you can now check out the Locked On Magic Daily newsletter, your one-stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com, and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Magic newsletter. That's going to do it for me today, though. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic for Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic. This has been Philip Rossman, right? See you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.